And Ambassador Sanjay Panda, former senior diplomat, is with us in the studio to discuss the potential for Russia-Ukraine peace. Thank you very much, sir, for being with us. Now, given the battlefield realities, is Russia really keen on a ceasefire this time?
We are still a long way off from the ceasefire. There's been a lot of effort, and Trump is progressively getting restless and frustrated. That is because of a poll promise. He said that even before I get into White House, and if not before, shortly thereafter, we will have a ceasefire, and I'll
on
ensure
day one,
that.
he said.
Yes, that's right. So there's been no dearth of effort on the part of Trump, and this is the first time since Russia invaded Ukraine in February 22. This is the first time that Russia at least says, okay, let's give peace a chance. But there are several conditionalities which Russia has not spelt out. But one statement which says that we'll have to ensure and find out what the root cause is and address that before we go for a temporary ceasefire.
Indeed. But do you see any other countries besides the US as potential mediators? Because, you know, Russia is wary of the Western mediators. And of course, Ukraine is wary of China. And Rubio, now he says that the US has given no concessions to Russia. So what do you think? I mean, are there any other countries that can help mediate?
Look, Mark, yesterday there were frantic telephone calls, early hours of today actually. Trump spoke to Putin and he says it's 2 hours of telephonic
Well,
talk.
the Russians have said it was 2 hours too. So.
The Russians also say it's 2 hours. Okay, I didn't know what the conversation, how it could last for 2 hours. But after that, he had a short, brief conversation with Zelensky, and then with the European leaders, I mean, the German Chancellor and Finnish President, and EU and UK for that matter. They said that we'll be helping Ukraine reach a ceasefire with Russia, and will be on the side of US. But Russia does not like the Europeans to come into the play. However, it's comfortable with US there. But also Russia is biding for time, and that's what also Zelensky accuses.
Right. So to what extent will this 17th package of EU sanctions have on, you know, shaping the conversation in a sense?
You see, the sanctions, even now, today actually, there has been little more which has been added. EU has added 200 more sanctions
That's right. That's
on
what
oil
I'm talking
tankers.
About. Right.
And UK has added 18 more. So that is something which is moving in parallel and will have no bearing on the ceasefire discussions.
So there's not much pressure that there's going to be?
No.
Okay.
I mean, this is too small. I mean, it is important from Russia's perspective, but at the same time, it is not material to affect the ceasefire. But then Zelensky feels that Russia is likely to come up with some unreasonable demands, which may affect the ceasefire or delay it, so that even if that were to happen, then Russia would be able to negotiate from a position of strength.
Indeed. So the US says that this is a European issue. Now, Europe is trying to get as strong as it can. We can see that Germany is going to be increasing its investment in defense, and it says there's going to be the strongest army in Europe. The European countries are getting together to increase their defense budgets. Do you think this is deterring Russia in any way, medium term to long term?
Not really. Russia's main concern now is you know, there's sanctions and the embargo, which affects its economically to develop economically. So that is Russia's primary concern. And Trump using a statement today saying he likes to use adjectives. So he says after the ceasefire, he said that ceasefire talks would commence immediately, but that may not happen. President Trump always preempts things, so it doesn't really work out that way. And he said that there will be enormous quote-unquote trade with both Ukraine and Russia. So one thing about President Trump, he's opening up several fronts on, trying to bring about peace. So his intention is noble in that sense, and he wants trade to take the upper hand instead of conflict. So that again, you have to give that.
So this is his art of the deal, as he says, and he keeps saying he makes deals. And he also, in our particular story also, he said that, he wouldn't be talking to the public if he didn't think that Russia is quite serious about peace at this kind of point of time. But behind the scenes, people are not too sure whether Russia is, in a position to negotiate. So if it's economics at the end of the day, and these sanctions continue to come from the West, the US is not increasing any sanctions, is that a sign that perhaps, Russia will be willing to come to the negotiating table?
See, let's make no mistake. Russia is going to come to the negotiating table at a time of its choosing. You cannot dictate Russia to come to the table. When Zelensky says that I'm not going to vacate or call back my troops from the eastern part of Ukraine, which is where Russia has partial control, that could be one of the conditions of Russia, that look, you get back to position on such and such date, and that's how we do it. So in fact, this weekend, if you see, there was major conflict which happened. In fact, there were several drone attacks on Ukraine, and Ukraine also claims that on 76 points, I mean, there were attacks and there was 1,000 Russian casualties. So we don't know how far these are true, but these do not augur very well for the ceasefire talks. So let's wait and see.
So, I mean, let's look at the big picture then. Has Russia achieved its objectives? Quite often it says that it has. But, there are some larger objectives. Does it want to, continue to have that divide in Europe? Let's say the Cold War period, where there was an Eastern Europe and the Western Europe. Is it trying to do that? I mean, these are the kind of concerns that maybe, people are thinking about. Is Russia, you said they will come to the negotiating at a time of their choosing. Is that the time of their choosing?
Well, you see, in diplomacy, it is not always that action, but the intent, demonstration of intent is equally important. And by their invasion of Ukraine, Russia has conveyed a very strong message to the West that you cannot take me casually. Let's see, what was the issue, the immediate issue? The expansion of NATO, which was coming to Russia's doorstep, and which it had zero tolerance, and it did give enough chance, but nobody expected this to happen. And then there was this candy which was shown to Ukraine that, look, you will be part of NATO. So Ukraine was also hoping that that would happen, which eventually didn't. So now West also realizes that there are red lines which it cannot cross. So Russia has now very strongly conveyed that message to the West.
Now, talking about NATO, I mean, you've served in Turkey, and Turkey, of course, is a member of NATO, not quite, in India's good books at the moment. But the point is that Turkey seems to have taken a stance which seems to be, again, different from the rest of NATO, isn't it? In this particular case as well.
That's right. Turkey sometimes moves in a tangent.
Right.
So I feel that.
And they were trying to have the peace talks in Istanbul of all places.
Yes. Turkey is very keen for that it should mediate the talks, because they're an important stakeholder. There's so much of Black Sea, the trade, and there's a lot of Soviet Russian fleet that moves there, Black Sea, Bosphorus. So that is why Turkey is an important player. But having said that, there is a deep distrust of Turkey both from Russia as well as Ukraine. Once it had tried to negotiate and mediate, and immediately then the message that Ukraine got that it was probably speaking the language of the Russians, and Russians weren't very sure what was happening. And the very next day after these talks, Turkey provided drones to Ukraine. It sold on commercial terms.
Okay.
So there is a distrust of Turkey.
Okay, we'll leave it there. Thank you very much, Ambassador Sanjay Panda. Thank you for expanding this story for us. Now,